I would have given the book away. You know, if someone just
Mm.
like, I'll publish it. We'll bind it up and everything. Yeah, I mean, I'd have taken a Happy Meal for this book. You know what I mean?
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. On this episode, author Chris Stuck joins us to talk about his debut short story collection, Give My Love to the Savages. During our conversation, we discuss the ubiquity and absurdity of the word nigger, what it means to construct a story, and why Chris said he had to accept failure and how doing so helped him become a better writer.
I was never a super goal-oriented person. I think I was just going through life and just going wherever life took me in some ways. I mean, that might have been because I was like, you know, a super pothead when I was younger or something. But at some point I'm one of these people that finally like learned what goals are in their like late 30s or mid 30s. And I've actually started to work toward them.
In setting his goals, Chris embraced the short story format, pulling from his own life as a biracial Black man to explore masculinity, sexuality, and race. He explains how this in-depth examination of America began with his very first short story, uniquely told from the perspective of a murdered teen in Money, Mississippi. That story is next, when Black and Published continues. When did you know that you were a writer?
Probably not till college. That was when I finally sort of discovered writing or my desire to write. But I think before that, I was trying to write and didn't realize it, probably in like high school and stuff. Like whenever we would have the opportunity to do either like a straight up paper or a creative project, I would always go for the creative project because I figure there's no wrong answer when it's creative. So yeah, it wasn't until college when I really got into books, and it was actually a creative assignment in college that I actually wrote my first like short story, I guess. And then from there it just blossomed, I guess, but it took a long time.
Okay, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I never like taking those final tests. I always liked when I had like final papers.
Right.
So do you remember the assignment that you had in undergrad where you wrote the first short story and was like, okay, this feels right?
Yeah, I remember exactly what it is. It was actually about Emmett Till. But I think I was a sophomore, and I think I might have been like a business major or something, but I hadn't fully declared English yet, and we had a graduate assistant teaching us. It was a literature class, and we read this Lewis Norton book called Wolf Whistle, which is about Emmett Till, but he's a white Southern writer, and it's about everything around Emmett Till. But I think it's from like maybe the wife of the people who killed Emmett Till, something like that. Anyway, so I reimagined part of like a scene or two from Emmett Till's perspective. And that was the first time I realized I could like make things up and, write completely new things. And I didn't have to really make too much up because I was basing it off of an already existing scene. But but then the teacher or the graduate teacher liked it, and she put it in like the little student literature review. And then after that, I declared English as my major and started taking creative writing classes, and it was like downhill from there,
Wow. So after you wrote this story and then declared your major in English and went down this rabbit hole of words, what did you discover about yourself and like what you wanted to do in the world? Because switching from business to English is a big thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, before that, I was I thought I wanted to be like an engineer or an architect. Like I was into building things, and like my older brother, one of my older brothers, he's like a car mechanic. So he was always building cars and motorcycles and stuff. So when I declared business, I was just like, I had to declare something. So I just said business. I didn't want to go into business at all, you know, but once I declared English, that was it. And I think I always wanted to be creative in some way. So I think I found something, and in a way it's sort of constructive, like building things or designing things, writing stories. To me, I feel like I'm building them as I'm writing them in that sort of engineering sort of way. So
I want to get to that, but you said something interesting about building a story like an engineer. What do you mean by that?
I guess it's just in my head. It's probably, abstract in some way, but it's probably very, I guess, concrete in other ways. Like I kind of just work paragraph to paragraph, sentence to sentence. And like when I'm writing something, if I get stuck, every day, if I'm working on a story every day, I start at the beginning, I read all the way through and then try and build on that. If I get stuck again, the next day I just start from the beginning. It's all about the flow of the words and the flow of the sentences. The beginning is the foundation at the bottom, and I build up from there. It's scratch the same itch of wanting to, like, when I was a kid, I used to like build little model cars and things like that. And you'd have to like build it, paint it, there's all these different processes behind it. And I think writing is the same way for me.
Okay, so you just wanted to write and make this living off of words. What does that look like in your life? Because after you graduate, you have an English degree and you go into writing. How are you living? How are you surviving in the world?
Office jobs, just office job after office job, just because they were easier jobs and I knew I could do them and I could leave them there. I wasn't super career minded. I've never been that way. I'm fine with not. I've gotten lucky with certain things like owning a house and stuff like that. But like, I never had a lot of money. I'm not very materialistic. So, or the things I do want don't cost very much. You know what I mean? I'm not into like jewelry and anything like that. So, it's just pretty basic, like artistic life, I guess.
So in doing all of these different office jobs, when did the writing piece begin for you? Or when did it start? Or was it happening all at the same time?
When I moved to Portland, I moved out here. I'm originally from Virginia. I moved to Portland in 2007, and I just, on a humble, just answered a Craigslist ad for an office job, just trying to get something going immediately. And it ended up working at a Black-owned diversity consulting firm. Just, Portland's very white. And the fact that I landed a job at a Black firm, totally just like, I don't know, just total luck. And then I was doing that for about 8 years. And then eventually the company folded, and then had like a year of unemployment, and then I was working on these stories, and finally I was like, well, this is my chance. I better make it happen. And I tried plenty other times to like try and get something going with agents and editors and stuff. And I had a few brushes here and there, but it stuck this time. It took, I guess. So I got lucky.
Yeah, because I'm like, you're just kind of like stumbling through life and doing whatever. And I was like, so where do the stories come in? So were you always writing and working on these stories your entire time after you got your MFA?
Yeah, definitely. I was working on not these exact stories, but other stories that were failures, basically. Like I've probably written like 3 novels, bunch of stories, and just trying to make something happen. And, especially with the novel stuff, the publishing world tells you like, we want novels, we want a novel, we want a novel. And like, I think even maybe you talked to Don Teal about that too. And so you think like I should write a novel, but like maybe I just probably wasn't mature enough or good enough to write a novel yet. And or a lot of things probably, I just probably wasn't all the way there. I hadn't done enough. And, some of it is just learning that this stuff doesn't just happen in 5 minutes. Like you got to really work on something, revise it, rethink it and all that stuff. So, but so I was just, ever since, once I got an MFA, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I just kept doing it. I would like one novel I had did kind of get a couple agents were kind of interested in it. And I'd had one story published that's in the book. That it was published in Callu, and an editor at Amistad, way before my editor at Amistad now, saw it and was like, "Do you have a novel?" And I was like, "Sure." And then I sent it to her, and she's like, "It's kind of not as good as the story." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." And I'd been holding on to this novel for like 10 years, and it was like based on people in my family. I was holding on to the dream hard. I was trying to make it. I was trying to make it happen, and
Chris.
yeah. At some point, I realized I had to just like let it go. It just wasn't working. And that's one thing I've learned with writing is like the inspiration has to be there.
Oh my gosh, I can go in so many different directions. I've never heard anyone say the story is a failure or the novel was a failure. I've heard them say, I stopped working on it, I'm going to come back to it. I've never heard someone just say it's just outright a failure. What makes it a failure, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, maybe failure is too strong of a word, but I'm fine with that word just because that's kind of, I guess that allows me to just be like, whatever, it's not working, moving on. Like that didn't work. Sometimes when I'm writing, I feel like you can gas yourself and trick yourself into thinking like, oh, this is dope and this is gonna work and everything. And I think the possibility of like, yeah, there's a huge possibility it's not going to work because it's happened to me plenty of times where it's not going to turn out the way I wanted it to. And so to me, failing isn't like necessarily bad, I guess. So it's not like I failed at life or something. It's just like, yeah, I wrote it. It was okay, but it just didn't hit like how I wanted it to. So, let me write something new.
So what was that story that you sent in to the editor at Amistad? Not your current editor, but the one that she then asked you for the novel and it turned out to be a no. What was that story?
Yeah, it's the story Cowboys in the book, which is it's about two security guards at like a wax museum, and which is just an off the wall idea. So like I'd gone to the Callaloo Writers Workshop. This is like in '07. And I guess we could submit stories to them, to the journal. And they took that story, which I was surprised by. And then next thing I know, the editor hit me up and she liked that the story was so different, I guess, you know what I mean?
Did you ever consider self-publishing as a way for you to get into the kingdom, so-called, or were you always trying to go the traditional route?
I thought about it, especially when this book was. So I got an agent in 2018, but he was like real gung ho about it. He's like, "Yo, this could sell in like a weekend, or it could take forever." And it ended up taking forever. It took like a year, and of sending it out and getting rejected and everything. And then at some point I wondered if like, maybe I'm just not, what I write just isn't, what they want, maybe it just isn't what they want to publish. So I actually thought about self-publishing. I was thinking like, what would I, down to like cover designs and things like that. I was asking like a friend of mine who does graphic design to like come up with a design for me. And then around the time I was thinking that, that's when my editor at Amistad just all of a sudden came out of nowhere and said she wanted the book. So
let's talk about that journey of publishing, because at the very beginning you mentioned that you would have given this story away. So like, what was that journey like for you to find your agent and to go through the revision process with them, and then before getting the deal with Amistad?
Some people write stories and then like each story they write, then they send that one out and trying to get it published in a journal or something. Like I wasn't worried about that. I figured, let me write the whole book and then I can do all that. And then I can try and find an agent and stuff. So that's basically what I did. I queried like 50 agents. I think I only heard back from 13 of them. And most of those were rejections. My agent now, Dan Mandel, he jumped on it immediately. So I was lucky, just to get to that point. And then he sends the book out and he's like, yo, this might sell in like on Monday, if he sends it out on Thursday or whatever. It didn't. And then he's like, he's giving me rejections. I'm totally complaining about. I'm like, what are they talking about? They're crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. And then at some point, it was just like, there was just nothing, it's just like, even the no's stopped happening. And he's like, no, we're going to keep sending it out. So then I was like, all right. He's like, let me know of any other places we haven't sent. So then I was like, well, maybe we should work on some like small presses. Maybe I'm not a big publisher kind of writer. I don't know. Because like I said, at that point, I just wanted the book to be out. And he's like, yeah, we'll do that. And, I entered into some like book contests where basically you get like $1,000 or something if you won it. And I didn't even win those. So and then he had Amistad on there. He's like, and I was like, oh, Amistad. I mean, I never even thought about them because I've always read their books, but they were more traditional Black narrative or like Edward Jones, who I love, but I'm like, I don't write like Edward Jones. So I thought they would, I just figured they wouldn't be into it, but he sent it out. And then Tracy Sherrod, my editor, like we talked like a few days after he sent it out. It happened really fast, and it was like a long, slow burn. And then all of a sudden it finally happened. And then from there, it's just, a lot more slow movement. You know what I mean?
How did that weigh on you? All those years of working on it, the trying to find an agent, the rejection. You talked about, trying to do it yourself, to do self-publishing before it finally hit. How did that weigh on you? Your confidence and everything else?
Oh man, heavily. Like the whole time, it was just weird because the whole time the book's getting rejected by publishers, I was sending the stories out myself to journals and they were getting picked up like fast, you know what I mean? So it's not, but yeah, I mean, I would go to the gym in the morning and, lift weights. And in between sets, I'd be like looking at my phone, like constantly trying to check my email to see if anything's popping up. And then damn near having like an anxiety attack. Like if this doesn't work, man, like what, cause this is the only thing I've really ever wanted to do. The only thing I was working toward, so I'd have to remind myself of all these different things and, and just keep going. A lot of it is just that's what I tell people, younger writers, just like, don't stop, just keep going. It's like anything, as long as you keep going, you're going to see some sort of success, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just hard. I mean, it's scary. And a lot of it's just being bold and following through and just don't stop. So,
but in the process of you finally getting the agent and the deal for the book, I think what stands out about it is because all the stories are so different. Like, I've never read anything like that. Not with Black characters.
Right.
Like, Cowboys was different. And then we were the Norrises with the witness protection. How to be a dick in the 21st century. I mean, all of these stories are just so off the wall. Everything is so imaginative. Do you think that being able to let the novel go allowed you to imagine just anything that you wanted to because you didn't have any limits and you had nothing holding you back that you were trying to push so hard?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that was the lesson from letting that go. Because that cowboy story, I actually wrote that in when I was in graduate school. And it was like way, it was a terrible version of it, but it was that basic idea, So I was writing just straight off off the dome back then, and then I think, street lit kind of hit around that time. And I was influenced by that. And I saw the parallels with like people in my family. And so that's probably why I went that direction. But then, by letting it go, I finally was able to just go back to the way I was writing before all that. So I kind of took like I won't say it was a wrong turn, but I took a left turn for a little bit. And then I finally came back. But then on the other side of the coin is before I wrote these stories, I was writing this crazy novel that was just too out there for at least for me, you know what I mean? So then I had to dial it back and then I had to find like a sort of middle ground to write these stories.
All right, Black and Published family, it is time for the reading of Give My Love to the Savages. And if you're not familiar with the book, here's a quick preview. So, Give My Love to the Savages is a short story collection of 9 stories that explore the Black experience, but also Black masculinity. Here's Chris.
All right. I'm just going to read from the first story, which is means a lot to me because based on my life, it's probably the most autobiographical story I'll probably ever write. But it's called Every Time They Call You Nigger. It happens first in kindergarten. You're 5. You and your classmates are playing soccer against the first graders. This is at St. James Catholic School in Falls Church, Virginia, a school your parents will soon decide is too goddamn expensive. In a year, they will send you to public school where you will hear the word more often, but this is before all that. You're on a hot blacktop in a roiling sea of kids. It seems like there are 10 games going at once, multiple balls, multiple goals. You've been alive for only 5 years. You don't know how the game works, so you stand near the goal like everyone else. The ball happens to come your way. You try to kick it, you actually connect. And your luck, the ball gets by the redheaded first grader in goal. Everyone goes crazy except him. He looks back at you with fire in his freckled face. He calls you the word just once, nigger. You've never heard it before. The venom in his voice tells you it isn't good. Your friend Jerry jumps on the redhead and drags him to the ground. Jerry is way darker than you and knows the meaning of the word even at 5. The back of the kid's head hits the pavement, sounding like someone cracking open a coconut. There's blood everywhere. Kids scatter. The redhead gets led away by a team of nuns, his white dress shirt now wet and bright red. Everyone watches him leave before going back to their games. When things settle down, you move away from goal. You aren't stupid. You let yourself get swallowed by that sea of kids so no one else can call you any other new names. The year is 1980 and you're what's called mixed. From that day in kindergarten on, though, the world considers you black. Not quite all the way black, but black enough to be called nigger. You even look black or mixed or like you've got some black in you. This is what people tell you without you asking. If your mother's black, they say you're black. That's the rule. So all your bases are covered. You're fucking black. Your father is white, of German and Irish descent. Your last name in German means peace. You're a piece of this and a piece of that. You wouldn't want to be anything else. In your house, the word nigger exists, but mostly in the abstract. Your 3 older half-brothers from your mother's first marriage, whose father is black and whom you grow up with, may occasionally say it when your mother isn't around. She doesn't approve of the word. She's lived through segregation. She's been bussed. The word is ugly to her, but at family reunions, she still laughs with all her siblings and cousins as they call each other the word as a punchline with love and affection. You see the word transform from slimy larva into a nimble butterfly. You watch it take flight.
Thank you. So I'm glad that you mentioned that it was the closest to autobiographical that you would ever write, because as I was reading the first story, I was like, I know this is fiction, but it reads like a memoir.
Right.
Right? And I think it also sets the tone for the collection as a whole, being that race, I don't think is, the primary subject of the stories, but it's always there in the background and in the situations of in the situations that the characters encounter. So you have this line that says, you walk through the valley of the shadow of race, you will fear no evil. How has your view of race as a construct and how it functions in society in these situations that Black people can find themselves in, how have you been able to, mine through that to get to the truth of it, to put it into fiction?
I guess, like, my father's white, my mother's black, but I grew up around my mother's family. That story basically just started with one day I was just thinking back about that time. That how it happens in that first scene is exactly how it happened to me. And I was just thinking, like, how crazy that scene was. Like, the kid, my friend Jerry, like, I barely changed names in that story. Like, my friend's name was Jerry, and that's exactly what happened. He calls me the name. My friend jumps on him, and there's like blood everywhere. And I was like, I was 5 years old, and I started to think, like, that's crazy. Like, I didn't block that memory out or anything. Like I always remember it, but you know, you get older, and I mean, I wrote that story when I'm 46 and 45 now, and I wrote that maybe 3 years ago. So, I mean, basically I knew it would be a good story, at least for me to write, just for myself, just because it would examine all these things that were, I guess, going on for as long as I can remember. And I actually wrote that story around, I had a few encounters with like racial stuff happening in Portland, and people like overhearing someone saying nigger or something that not with a hard R, you know what I mean? And not, you know, and just being like, what, you know, and just thinking like, because at some point when I was a kid, like it seemed like, and I talk about that in that story, is like it seemed like the word kind of was going away. Well, not going away, but people were afraid to say it. They weren't saying it as openly. And then now it seems like it's come back. But for whatever reason, you know, race is always just going to be a part of every Black person's life in America. And that's why what I wanted to examine that word, because that's in every Black person's life, either in a good way or a bad way. You know, it could happen, be that way simultaneously.
I think that totally comes across because even in the story section that you read, and then throughout the story, you touch on it. I mean, it's not explicit, but anyone that knows history will recognize that, you know, the one drop rule. So, you know, your mom's Black, so that makes you Black. Or then even going back to the days of slavery where it was children follow the matrilineal line because that made them property.
Right.
And then you have this line here that says, you know, this one word follows you everywhere you go, like a black cloud or a guardian angel. What else in life feels as close as kin as that word?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, just because like, I mean, even like like I try to, you know, I go into masculinity and stuff, like it seemed like that word meant so many things, you know, the concept of the real nigga, or you're a street nigga if you can say this, or if you say it a certain way, if it sounds right coming out of your mouth, then that means you're blacker than, you know, say someone who, I don't know, like some Bryant Gumbel person or something who might not be able to pull off the accent, you know what I mean? You know, it's just an odd word, you know, and it's so like this book, I wanted to write about a book about America, really. And that word is so American because it's like, it's nowhere else, really. It's just a weird word and how it's just spread everywhere. And like, whereas other racial slurs kind of don't, you know, there are other, you know, aren't as ubiquitous, I guess, as, you know, the quote unquote N word, it's even the word to describe the word is a word, like the N word, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, but it kind of sets up, you know, the further discussion because there is no equivalent to that word, not in meanness, not in when it's said with love. There is no equivalent. And talking to you now, I think it really does, you know, set up the entire collection for what you say is a conversation about examining America, because then the next story is how to be a dick in the 21st century, where, and I guess this is a spoiler alert, where the main character turns into an actual penis and then realize that he's a misogynist and a rapist.
Right. Yeah.
and like in that examination and being, I guess, so fantastical in the fiction of it, it allows the deep criticism, or even for the reader to take away, like, wait, that's not right.
Right.
Kind of aspect of what's happening in our country today. And it sounds like, were you very intentional about that?
Yeah, definitely. Like with the first story, I knew it would kind of catch people's attention. And, but then at some point I realized with the collection, I was trying to examine masculinity, the forces on like Black masculinity, but then also, you know, like in Lake No Negro, where this Black guy is fetishized by a white couple and he doesn't even realize it, you know? but with the how to be a dick story, then I realized I needed to examine masculinity in the way of the absurdity of masculinity and the absurdity of men, and how they, at one point would be like, well, that's just the good old boy. That's just boys, locker room talk. And like they get, people justify like certain things. And then I just thought, what if he woke up one day and he's cursed to be a a walking, talking penis, and then that's it. You know what I mean? That's his life. So each section starts with like, when you realize this about that you're a dick, or if when you wake up one morning and you're a dick, you realize it's not any different from any other morning, and you realize he's been a dick forever. So just like with the word nigger, I wanted to examine it, look at it from all these different angles. With masculinity, I wanted to look at masculinity from a bunch of different angles. It's always intentional, but sometimes sometimes you just, something pops up while you're writing and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to go with that. And then you can start to see what you can do with it.
I think that examination of masculinity comes throughout. And it's not just examination of masculinity as adult men, but also as children with, and then We Were the Norrises, about the two boys. And then that's talking about not only masculinity, but sexuality in this crazy story of, witness protection and not being able to say your true identity and friendship and all of that. What from your own experience do you think helped you give these characters so much body, in that they seem so very real, even though the situations are kind of far out and crazy, they all still seem so very real and so very urgent and so very present?
I think a lot of it is I was lucky to grow up in a diverse community and in a diverse family. Like even I grew up in Virginia, and Northern Virginia, right outside of DC, and I mean, it's white everywhere, but there were I grew up with like, Iranian kids, Asian kids, obviously my whole Black family. But then for a time, my dad's from Washington State, and he met my mother in Virginia. He moved east and whatever. They had me and everything. But then at some point, we moved to the West, and I ended up being in north of Seattle for 5 or 6 years, something like that. And then there, my friends were like Black and Native American kids. So I think just seeing other people's humanity, just different people's plights, I guess. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to go into all these different kind of characters, even though they're all Black, just because, Blackness isn't just a monolith. We're all different, all shapes and sizes. You know what I mean? I just wanted to write characters I've never seen before, and just write about dynamics that don't get put out there like a ton. Like, I just want to fully imagine everything. And I think that's what the difference between, pretty good writing and really good writing is like, things are fully imagined.
You have this story about the 1992 LA riots, and it's about this father and the son is biracial, the father is white, and they go on this crazy ride around checking his property, in which he leaves one of them. What are you trying to convey? Because I was like, this story is so wrong by the time I got to the end of it, but I understood it. And I was like, I don't even know where this came from.
Right. A friend of mine who's white, she told me a story that her cousin, he was flying into LA basically when the uprising just started. And I guess his dad asked him to like guard something, So I instantly thought that would be a good idea. And as soon as she told me that story, I went back in time in my head instantly, and I remembered all these different things. I was like, oh man, no one's ever written a story about that I know of. And it was such a unique situation. And then as soon as she told me that, I knew I'd make the son biracial. I knew the father would be white. But as far as everything else, the car dealerships and like driving around, I realized I had to make them sort of like travel around LA. and then eventually it's sort of like a Dante's Inferno kind of thing. They keep going down the rings and rings until finally, you get to the end. But I knew I could parallel what happened to Rodney King, maybe possibly in the story, in the character's past. I knew, a few mixed kids that had problematic relationships with one or both of their parents, or one or side of their family, or, stuff like that. So I knew I could examine. I was lucky that I didn't have that kind of stuff in my life, but I saw it in other people. So I knew it was something I could sort of examine and then find some stuff out about, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because the writing in this story specifically about what it's like to be biracial is so acute that I was like, well, are you talking about yourself here? Right. Or are you talking about the characters? So like, you say the emotional effects of being of mixed race in this country, how it led to antisocial behavior and the desperate quest to fit in. That it made me wonder, like, well, are we struggling here with identity? What's happening? And like, I think at the end of it, I wrote, do you find it a privilege to be able to pass even though you identify as Black?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I mean, and that's another thing I wanted to examine with a lot of these stories is just, I feel privileged. Like my older brothers are, much darker than me, you know what I mean? And I've seen like my brother closest to me, they're much older than me too. They're from my mother's first marriage. So like the closest brother to me is 10 years older than me, but we all grew up together. I also know, I could be with them and some people don't realize that we're brothers, you know what I mean? They just think like I'm some Hispanic dude they know or something, So I'm totally aware of that, but I wanted to examine all these different things and just privilege. And I wanted to examine also just how different sides of Blackness, you know what I mean? You don't have to be hood to be Black. So it's just the diversity of Blackness, sometimes that doesn't get put out there enough.
I think in the collection as a whole, it's very evident that Blackness is not a monolith, and that there's no one way or right way or wrong way to be Black. I read from an article that you posted that, this collection took you 20 years to put out. Now that it's out, is it everything that you hoped it would be?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, it's more. It's better than I thought it was going to be. Truthfully, I couldn't have imagined doing it any earlier. I probably wouldn't have been ready or mature enough for it. So, yeah.
I totally get it. What do you want readers to get out of this collection?
Basically, I just want them to see race and Blackness and masculinity in a different way than maybe they've seen before. The writer side of me wants them to just realize how dope I am as a writer, you know what I mean? But what I want people to get to see all these different things, like I don't have the answers, but I want them to see the questions that I'm putting out there and, different portrayals, and see that like it when like some people are like, this is different from other books. I'm like, yeah, you got it. You understood what it was. So like, yeah, but like just racism, masculinity, Blackness, seeing that these are different stories, and that it's good to have that kind of diversity, especially in Black literature.
All right, so let's go into this speed round. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book is James Allen McPherson's Elbow Room. It's a story collection.
Who is your favorite author?
I'd probably say James Baldwin, but maybe James Allen McPherson would be right behind that.
What is your favorite hip hop group or artist? Or who is your favorite hip hop group or artist?
Big Daddy Kane.
And along those same lines, what is the GOAT hip hop album?
It's a hard one. That's really hard. I mean, everyone says like Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Illmatic, I think, is one of my favorites. Enter the 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang. Yeah, those will probably be up there for me. I'm probably gonna miss one that's so obvious, but
Ah, it's all good. I just noticed you always have hip hop in your on your feed or in your story. So I was like, I gotta
yeah,
ask.
yeah.
What's something that you want that you don't have? You said you're not very materialistic, but now that makes me wonder. There's got to be something.
I mean, I like a big house, not huge, but I like a house with enough space. I live in a really small house at this moment. I like to have enough space, more bedrooms, but not like a big mansion or anything like that. But just a nice, 4-bedroom house or something. I don't know. I'm not really into like cars and stuff are cool, but like uh, that I'm kind of getting old and practical, so I just want space.
If money was no option, where would you live?
Wow. Um, I'd live in Japan. I'd live like in Argentina. I'd live in California. I'd live in New York City. I'd live in Paris. I'd just bounce around. I'd live somewhere for like 2 or 3 months and then move somewhere else. That's what I would love to do.
All right. And then going full circle with that conversation, what are your goals now?
I want to explore writing novels more. And it's not just because that's what they really want, but it is because that's what they really want. And I want to try and figure out a way to sort of work with inside of the system. If I can keep making some sort of money at this and being able to do something that I want to do creatively, it makes me, I guess, more focused on what I need to be doing instead of before I was just like groping in the darkness and like just trying. And then at some point you kind of sort of get what you're doing. And then it makes me want to do what I do, but then find new ways to do that. I have another batch of stories that I'm trying to fix up, see if I can, which are kind of a continuation of Give My Love to the Savages, just to keep going. But I kind of, once I've done enough of them, I feel like I want to move on to a different form, and novels I'm just thinking of novels like this novel I just wrote or finished, but I'm back to square one again, because then that means like fielding rejections. Is this book any good? It's the same thing all over again. So, but I'm cool with that.
All right. And then my last question for our interview today. So you've wanted to write forever and you're doing that. When you're no longer here, what would you like someone to write about the legacy of words that you left behind?
I just hope they have something good to say, and see like even like with older writers like James Allen McPherson or James Baldwin, like, you kind of can't judge them on today's standards, but you can, if you know history, what the landscape was maybe when they were writing that, and you see why it was important then. I hope people see, why my book is important, hopefully, to this period, and what it might have been saying about this period in time. Whereas, and just to maybe hopefully see that it's different from other things, and that, like I said, not to, the writer, hip hop enthusiast in me, I just want them to think of it like he was dope. He was dope. He did his thing, you know what I mean? So
yes, and give my love to the savages.
Right.
Thank you, Chris, so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Big shout out to Chris Stuck for being here on Black and Published today. Make sure you check out Chris's debut short story collection, Give My Love to the Savages, out now from Amistad Books. And if you're not following Chris, follow him on the socials. He's at super_biracial on Twitter and at super_biracial_man on Instagram. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Chris, giving you a deeper dive on writing characters he's never seen and exploring the layers of Black masculinity and the strength of Black women. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week. Peace.